Mr. Speaker, first let me congratulate you on your ascension to the high office as
Thank you,
Speaker
sir.
of this House after many years of public service to Guyana. And I also like to take the opportunity to congratulate Mr. Lennox Schumann on his election to the office of Deputy Speaker. A signal achievement, an event that is important in the history of Guyana as we observe the month of celebration of our Amerindian brothers and sisters and their contribution to life, culture, and development of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I'm reminded of a quotation by Thomas Paine, and I quote, "To argue with a man who has renounced the use and authority of reason and whose philosophy consists in holding humanity in contempt is like administering medicine to the dead." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, I rise to convey my full and unwavering support to Budget 2020, which was ably and eloquently presented by our Honorable Minister of Public Works, Bishop Juan Ejel. A budget presented under the theme, Our Plan for Prosperity, protecting our people in a COVID-19 environment, strengthening democracy and the rule of law, incentivizing growth and job creation, enhancing welfare. Mr. Speaker, we previously heard about the 4 states, but there's no need for green state. There's no need for education state, as mentioned by the previous speaker. Now is the time for prosperity for all the people of Guyana. Prepared with just 38 days following the official yet delayed declaration of Guyana's general and regional elections, this $329.5 billion budget was completed in record timing, despite the challenges faced by our country in the face of a global pandemic, coupled with a national political crisis in which our democracy had been severely threatened. I wish, therefore, to commend Honorable Vice President Barrett Jagdeo, Honorable Minister Ejil, and their team for the arduous but much appreciated effort invested in developing this budget, which aims at delivering economic relief to our citizens and our country as a whole. The completion of this budget, even in this latter part of 2020, is a shining assertion of our government's unwavering commitment to driving our country forward into a future where prosperity is secured. Mr. Speaker, our journey to this point has not been an easy one, as the last several months of our country's history have tested our resilience as a people. Yet despite the unorthodox circumstances and conditions under which it was conceived, those on the opposite side of this House continue to make noise with their unfounded claims about the inadequacy of this budget to address the needs of the people of Guyana, when in fact much of the woes which have been foisted on us as a people came from the very same AFC administration. It is they who are guilty of doing nothing much for the people of this country. For the past 5 years, they sat in office. They're the ones who fill their pockets and the pockets of their friends by handing out jobs and contracts, while the ordinary man was burdened with the inimical policies created by the APNU AFC administration and had to struggle to provide for his family. The people they now pretend to defend are the ones who they punished while they sat comfortably in office, enjoying the sweet, looking on as the people suffered and brought no benefit to the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, I humbly submit that with a 48.4 to 51.2% projected growth in our economy, and with the provisions of this budget, Guyana is primed to emerge in a better economic state than we were at the beginning of 2020. And allow me to assure you that this will be achieved in keeping with this government's vision and determination for a country that is free, prosperous, socially just, globally competitive, and which serves every Guyanese equitably, as declared in the PPPC's manifesto. And so, it is with great pleasure that I highlight the developments under the portfolio of the Office of the Prime Minister that will see the vision become a reality. Mr. Speaker, the Office of the Prime Minister portfolio consists of 4 key programs, of which a total of $7.5 billion have been catered for in this 2020 budget. As the real Prime Minister, I am loaded with the responsibilities of power generation, which aims at the effective and efficient provision of energy services countrywide. Telecommunications and innovation, which centers on telecommunication policies, the creation of a viable information and communication technology sector, and the seamless sharing of data among government ministries and agencies. Thirdly, government information and communication services, which ensures the execution of the government's policy on broadcasting public information to expand the government's media presence across the country. And fourthly, disaster preparedness, response and management, which focus on developing, improving, and implementing policies aimed at ensuring our country's readiness and relief operations. Mr. Speaker, though each program possesses a distinct mandate, a nexus among the agencies under these programs can clearly be ascertained, and that is the enhancement of the lives of our people through energy, innovation, information, and preparedness. These programs together bring empowerment to our people, allowing them to forge even forward while being equipped with adequate tools to contribute to the development of our country. Mr. Speaker, today's world is full of environmental challenges that threaten the very survival of humankind. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals outline a clear-cut pathway that encourage international participation in the achievement of a sustainable future. These are highlighted explicitly in SDG 7, which zeroes in on increasing renewable energy in the global energy mix. And doubling global rate of improved efficiency. My government recognizes the potential that energy holds for the economic growth of Guyana through its ability to usher in an enhanced quality of life for our citizens. And we intend to achieve the provision of affordable, stable, and reliable energy through an energy mix which incorporates hydropower, solar, and wind, along with an increased capacity for electricity to be utilized by residential and commercial industrial users. Mr. Speaker, with the budget allocation of $3 billion to this sector, these and other initiatives will see immediate continuation and commencement of activities by agencies that fall within this program, which I will discuss as follows. Energy is necessary for economic growth and an enhanced quality of life for all Guyanese. As my colleague, the Honorable Minister Ejil, stated in his budget presentation, the former APNU AFC administration failed to develop sufficient baseload generation capacity to ensure a stable and reliable supply of energy to our people, resulting in severe and prolonged inconvenience. Our PPP government will therefore immediately tackle the irregular power supply and frequent blackouts that we all have been experiencing in the recent past. Mr. Speaker, our government will provide affordable, stable, and reliable energy to benefit households and businesses by utilizing an energy mix, as mentioned before, of hydropower, solar, and wind. The government has already advanced a transparent expression of interest process to engage local suppliers to fulfill the country's growing immediate power demand. Mr. Speaker, our government is also pursuing a medium to long-term path that will allow for the completion of the Amelia Falls Hydro Project, which we will work towards, and for the use of natural gas to bring cheaper energy to all Guyanese by the year 2024. We'll continue to pursue low-carbon initiatives such as mini-hydro grid-tied systems as part of our energy diversification efforts. Mr. Speaker, GEA will install hydrological measurement equipment to assess the potential for mini and micro hydro power development at various locations across the country. Data has already been collected at Purima in Region 7, and the hydro power engineers are currently preparing a pre-feasibility study for the site. Data is currently being collected at Ramadan, again in Region 7, subject to travel restrictions as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Hydrological loggers will soon be installed at Monkey Mountain in Region 8 and Eclipse Falls in Region 1 to determine the hydropower potential of those sites. Solar and wind systems for off-grid areas will be advanced as a top priority to provide renewable energy for the hinterland under the Hinterland Electrification Program. The GEA will also be advancing the installation of solar farms for Bartica and Letep. Also, Mr. Speaker, the GEA is supporting the Hinterland Electrification Company, Inc. by conducting energy needs assessment for all 200 plus hinterland communities across our country. Assessments have already been completed at Seaby, Mainstay Wayaka, and Tapakuma St. Denis, Morakabai, Parima, Ramadong, Kurukubaru, Anai, and Aichuni. The solar maintenance program will effect repairs to solar photovoltaic systems at Carrier Nursery and Primary Schools, Carrier Health Outposts, Kapui Nursery and Primary Schools, La Harmony Primary School, St. Denis Health Center, Tapakuma Lake Primary School, Abrams Creek Primary School, Bethany Primary School, 47 Miles Health Center, and St. Monica Health Post. Mr. Speaker, as a first step towards providing low-carbon energy, some 25,000 households in Amerindian, hinterland, and deep riverine communities can expect an upgrade and replacement of their solar panels. The GA's energy efficiency program will advance the installation of energy-efficient lights in government buildings and hinterland homes and businesses. The agency will continue to manage the issuance of license for importing, wholesale, retail, consumption, installation, bulk transportation, carriers, and storage of fuel and petroleum products. I will continue to administer the fuel market program to mark and test fuel under the GA Act of Government Policy, and prosecute offenders, known offenders. We all know them, in accordance with the law. Mr. Speaker, it is envisaged that this extensive program under the GA will lead to more than 400 megawatts of newly installed capacity for residential and commercial industrial users over the period 2020 to 2025. Mr. Speaker, the Hinterland Electrification Company has been budgeted a sum of $42.2 million to conduct its work. And, Mr. Speaker, approximately 15% of Guyana's 750,000 inhabitants who live in the hinterland in about 200 communities will benefit from the Hinterland Electrification Program. Mr. Speaker, these communities are often neglected, with basic necessities such as power, leaving them to fend in the proverbial and literal darkness, while citizens in other parts of the country enjoy these amenities. As such, the Hinterland Electrification Program is a top priority for our government, with $400.6 million allocated towards its expansion. The electrification strategy for the hinterland was developed under the PPPC government since 2006. The program saw about 20,000 households provided with access to electricity through the provision of solar home systems or the extension of electricity grids. However, the households that were supplied with solar PV home systems were just able to satisfy a fundamental demand for electricity. Today, these households have a much greater demand for electricity. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, our government intends to implement projects at the community level to provide hinterland communities with increased access to modern energy, to support the delivery of social services and create new economic opportunities in these communities. The economic development that follows is expected to facilitate the gradual expansion of electricity service to meet the needs at the household level. In addition, Mr. Speaker, electricity grid systems will continue to be upgraded and expanded, adding renewable energy technologies to reduce dependency on fossil fuels to support the socio-economic development of the associated communities. Mr. Speaker, the general objective is to improve the public infrastructure in the communities to satisfy increasing energy demand and thus offer services to improve the living condition of the residents in these communities. Mr. Speaker, developments in the oil and gas sector have led to projections of significant growth in the demand for electricity. And so the Guyana Power and Light, Inc. must receive the support it needs to develop its capacity to meet the demands in order to satisfy the people of our country. However, this institution has over the years faced numerous challenges to supply industrial and domestic consumers with a low-cost, reliable supply of electricity. Mr. Speaker, added to these insufficiencies, GPL is currently owed over $18.1 billion in debt by other government agencies and private entities. This shortfall in payments began a steady decline from 2015 to date and has had a significant impact on the company's financial standing. The company has to face the issue of non-availability of operating funds to adequately meet its operating expenditures. This hot mess, inherited from the APNU-AFC administration, has placed the institution at a further disadvantage with regard to its own capacity building and operations. These are problems which our government has the task of rectifying. However, we will face it and we will fix it once and for all in our tenure. We will ensure that what is owed to GPL is paid by our government, a government that will show leadership and financial discipline in supporting all its entities. Mr. Speaker, a total of $3 billion have been budgeted for power companies and projects over Guyana. Let Them Power Company, Kokwani Utilities, Lynn Mine, Mabaruma, Madia, Maruka, Matthews Ridge, Port Kaituma. All these companies will be adequately funded by the budget through the Office of the Prime Minister. Included in Budget 2020, Mr. Speaker, are provisions that will fund activities geared towards improving the operations of GPL by addressing the following aspects in the structural upgrade to decrease line loss, reinforcement of infrastructure to improve reliability, institutional strengthening through training and reinforcement of techniques required for efficient management at the executive and senior management levels, and operational efficiency through consultancies in system planning, economic demand forecasting, supervisory control, and data acquisition, operation, and maintenance. Mr. Speaker, with a focus on building an advanced and robust economy, and with the rapid technological advancements occurring globally, it is imperative that attention is given to information and communication technology, particularly as it relates to its use as a tool of economic and social empowerment. Today, ICT is ever present. It has been one of the significant contemporary pillars of social and economic development throughout the world. It is for this reason that many countries have deployed substantial efforts and resources in the area of ICT. While developed countries have made tremendous strides, developing countries such as Guyana will have a long way to go. Goal 9 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals speaks to technology development, research, and innovation, and its use as a mechanism for economic prosperity. Mr. Speaker, there is tremendous potential for ICT to be used for developments in all sectors of our society. In health, education, security, infrastructure, agriculture, and social development. Moreover, ICTs enable innovation to develop solutions that can lead to the enhancement of quality of life. Against this backdrop, our government is aware of the need for improved access to ICTs across the country and has allocated $5.2 billion in this budget towards ICT development, which includes focusing on access to internet and enhanced e-government services. $533.7 million of the government ICT development allocation will support the agencies in the telecommunication and innovation sector in helping to achieve our overall objectives. With the continued robust agenda of the agencies under this program, this vision can begin to take form and come to fruition. Mr. Speaker, a total of $476.1 million will be budgeted for the National Data Management Authority. The National Data Management Authority will continue to expand its fiber optic network this year to meet the demands of ministries and government agencies. By the end of October, the network will span from Corica to Skeldon, and further network expansion will continue in the south of Guyana, in the hinterland regions, providing much needed connectivity for citizens, especially during this ongoing pandemic. All schools and educational institutions will also be supported by the network, as our classrooms are now going online for the rest of this year. The ICT hubs established across the country will also come into play, providing those without internet connectivity and computers with the means to participate in the online education drive. Significant effort will be put into ensuring that application forms for government services are placed online to reduce the need for in-person interactions. The applications received can then be processed manually or digitally by the ministry or agency as the circumstance warrants. Over 200 forms have been developed, and we are now in the process of verifying their functionality with representatives from the various ministries and government agencies before carrying out the implementation process. The Center for Excellence in Information Technology, CEIT, which is a school to help bridge the gap between academia and industry, launched in June 2019 through a partnership between the government of Guyana and India, will be retuned and refitted to provide online courses instead. Courses will continue to be provided in the areas of network security, Linux administration, data communication and networking, business computing, information technology, and advanced web technologies. Speaker, a total of $57.6 million has been budgeted for the Industry and Innovation Unit. In keeping with the overall vision of ICT and national development, the responsibility of the unit has now been extended to coordinate strategies and related activities in support of the post-implementation phases of the government's vision to provide connectivity and supporting ICT infrastructure in over 200 communities nationwide. The role of the unit is to ensure that the digital transformation needed to advance ICT literacy and overall readiness of our citizens is assured and sustainable. Mr. Speaker, the policy work will continue through the end of this year with the development of draft legislation and explanatory memoranda for the protection of ever-increasing electronic information being provided by our citizens and utilized by the government and other sectors. One of the significant effects of COVID-19 will be a considerable growth of citizen-related information being stored and processed online. It is critical, therefore, that legislation and supporting regulation be established to govern the access and utilization of same. The unit is in the final stages of completing a draft national ICT plan. The next stage is the coordination and implementation of a public comment period and the stakeholder consultation process. The unit will also be coordinating the development of the electronic transactions or e-commerce legislation for public comment and consultation. One of the more critical activities this year, Mr. Speaker, is the oversight of the refurbishment of the Linden Call Center. Government has allocated $65.6 million for its completion. The objective is the repair and launch of the center to attract industry investors and create at least 250 jobs in the Linden community. This center is projected to be completed by the end of November 2020. Mr. Speaker, ICT is critical to our ability to quickly respond to what is becoming the new normal due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The need to avoid mass gatherings while still providing for routine matters such as classroom-like learning and meetings in the work setting will demand not only the deployment of telecommunications networks, but providing affordable access to them. Added to this is the need to reduce in-person interaction by providing online applications and services. Mr. Speaker, the government has a duty to meet the needs of our people despite the pandemic. And so, we are committed to the liberalization of the telecommunications sector in order to unleash the competition that is indispensable to reducing prices, thus making access to telecommunication networks affordable for our citizens. This initiative will see increased entrepreneurship for our people, increased investment via a bigger marketplace for telecommunications providers, a wider and more affordable list of telecommunication options for Guyanese, and more jobs and greater opportunities for innovation. Mr. Speaker, we cannot put off the liberalization any longer. As a result, since our assumption to office, the PPPC government has literally hit the ground running in this regard by initiating the process towards the liberalization of our telecommunications sector. Moreover, it was a campaign promise that we know we must deliver on in the shortest possible time frame. The liberalization of the sector will be accompanied by promulgation of the Universality Fund, by which access to telecommunication networks will be supported and subsidized for the most vulnerable among us. Our government recognizes that in order to operate in the new dimension of a liberalized sector, capacity will have to be built in the regulatory entities. Thus, special attention will be paid to strengthening the telecommunication agency in preparation for regulating in a liberalized environment. Mr. Speaker, our government will also, as you heard, eliminate VAT on mobile phones. This is a measure that has long been requested by consumers and the industry because the mobile phone is the poor person's computer. These devices are dependent upon by thousands of Guyanese for access to data and internet services. Mr. Speaker, oversight of the ICT Access for Hinterland, Poor and Remote Communities project also falls under the Office of the Prime Minister. And this is a 17 million US transformative project. It is funded by Guyana Red Plus Investment Fund, known as GRIF, and aims at enhancing access to ICT and government services to hinterland, poor, and remote communities, which are considered to have the greatest need because of their because of their location and economic circumstances. One of the first directives as Prime Minister and becoming Prime Minister was the order for the immediate commencement of the installation of equipment for the establishment of the 200 fully functioning ICT hubs under this project, given its potential to place Guyana on the digital map and to enable us to provide government services to an additional 100,000 Guyanese. Moreover, this initiative is even more imperative, given the need for remote forms of communication in light of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Mr. Speaker, with regards to government information and communication services, with the advent of technology, our people are now exposed to more information, leading to a demand from the public for accountability and transparency from their government. Moreover, it's a fundamental right for citizens to be informed of what their government is doing, leading to the need for a strong system that enables government to disseminate large amounts of information. Such a system, built on durable policies, ensures trust, increased accountability, and even aids in guiding decision-making by citizens and the private sector. Speaker, our government acknowledges the solemn right of citizens to information, including all matters concerning their welfare and the status of the state and its assets. National policies, plans, programs, and projects which impact their lives and well-being. Further, our government acknowledges that the state has an obligation to provide information to our citizens on all matters relating to policy decisions. Such information is fundamental to promoting both understanding of all public issues and encouraging meaningful engagement with and involvement of the Guyanese people. Coordination of such information is equally vital in a state that has many separate ministries, departments, regional, municipal, and local administrative bodies. You're all required in a democracy to present to the people factual and timely information on laws and regulations, policies, programs, and activities. Mr. Speaker, you've heard from the Honorable Minister Kwame Mokai in his presentation about the major plans in store under the Government Information and Communication Services Program, which include media development, broadcast modernization, and increased interaction with our citizens to receive feedback on government policies. With the budgeted $221.5 million for this sector, ensuring the strengthened capacity of the agencies under this program, there is high on our list of priorities in order to achieve these goals and bring information to our people. Mr. Speaker, the state broadcaster, the National Communications Network, has been riddled with mass corruption and gross mismanagement. The financials of this company, as well as a simple walkthrough of the agency, will prove this. The staff have been working in the most horrendous conditions for the past 5 years, while those who now sitting on the opposite side watch on from their high horses and did nothing. Instead, they paid millions of dollars to their incompetent associates who sat in executive offices and ran the company into the ground, near bankruptcy. They left the staff to battle daily in a workplace where they're threatened. No wonder the grave underperformance. This is one of the many state agencies that our PPPC government now has to save after the APNU left in shambles. Mr. Speaker, based on projections for the period October to December 2020, the NCN will receive a total subvention of $118.1 million. This allocation will ensure the agency fulfill its mandate of creating a connected and informed society while providing the functionality of transmission and studio equipment and enhancing staff development and growth. NCN's vast network reaches across all 10 administrative regions, and its mission is to promote social and human development through accurate and up-to-date information via live TV and radio shows, news and current affairs, outside broadcasts of national development plans, programs, activities, and priorities of the government for both coastal and hinterland regions. The allocation, Mr. Speaker, will enable the agency to invest in training and upgrades for permanent and contract staff across the network. Further, there is need for preventative maintenance and servicing at all locations. At Radio Essequibo, plans to train and recruit personnel to start local broadcasting by year-end are in place. Another priority in the final quarter is to upgrade the company website and build a NCN app. The capital subvention will assist in retooling the network to keep the national network online through NCN 3 coastal radio stations, 8 regional radio stations, and over the NCN TV network, which has 10 live TV transmission facilities via satellite. Capital investment represents the purchase of equipment and spares needed to maintain the agency's multimedia satellite earth stations and the satellite downlink system nationwide. With $87.1 million allocated to the Department of Public Information, Mr. Speaker, the remainder of the year bodes well for the coordination and dissemination of public information to our citizens as DPI seeks to fulfill its mandate of advising government on communications and public relations. executing the government's public information program, implementing feedback mechanisms to allow Guyanese in Guyana and abroad to provide thoughts and views, participate in, as well as support national development goals. Mr. Speaker, the allocation in this budget will see this institution being able to purchase much needed software and equipment necessary for undertaking its mandate and building the capacity of its staff to ensure the highest quality output of public information. With regards to disaster preparedness, response, and management, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister of Public Works alluded to the need for the evolution and expansion of our disaster preparedness, response, and management capabilities in the face of the ongoing novel coronavirus pandemic, COVID-19. Other emerging diseases that threaten our health and well-being, as well as natural disasters that could upend the routine functioning of our lives. As such, the government has allocated $3 billion to the Civil Defense Commission to provide social relief to persons impacted by COVID-19 and to also respond effectively to the impact of floods, droughts, and other national and man-made disasters across the country. Only earlier we heard that there is no plan for COVID-19 by our government. And this $3 billion is separate and apart from the $4.5 billion that was previously announced by His Excellency President Ivanali. Mr. Speaker, our country is particularly susceptible to the effects of flooding because approximately 90% of the population resides in the coastal plain, and the country's central economic and administrative hub is 1 to 3 meters below the mean sea level. Further, a large part of the agriculture sector, which contributes to 32% of our GDP, is also located on the coast. Apart from the coastal regions being susceptible to flooding, the interior regions, such as Region 7, Region 8, and Region 9, have been experiencing severe flooding as a result of heavy and persistent rainfall in Guyana, Brazil, and Venezuela. Guyana is also susceptible to droughts that significantly affect agriculture in the coast and interior. Forest fires, diseases such as Zika, chikungunya, and now COVID-19. And of course, high winds, which cause severe damage to or complete loss of homes, as in the recent cases in regions 7, 8, and 10. These are all threats that impact our country. Added to the increase in severity and frequency with which natural disasters are occurring around the world, Guyana may not be spared. Mr. Speaker, the current disaster risk management and reduction strategy to reduce the country's vulnerabilities will therefore be enhanced with a renewed focus and greater emphasis placed on disaster risk reduction and building resilience at all levels. This approach is necessary because hazards impact communities first, so they must have the capacity to reduce their risk and to respond efficiently while awaiting additional support from the regional and national levels. These approaches include both structural and non-structural mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery measures. Mr. Speaker, according to the World Bank, poverty projections suggest that the social and economic impacts of the COVID-19 crisis are likely to be quite significant. Estimates based on growth projections from the June 2020 Global Economic Prospect report show that when compared with pre-crisis forecasts, COVID-19 could push 71 million people into extreme poverty in 2020 under the baseline scenario, and 100 million people under the downside scenario. It's recently evident in Guyana that the coronavirus pandemic has an impact on the economic circumstances of individuals and households, with many households losing large amounts of income due to loss of jobs, closure of industries, and restrictions to sectors. Further, closure of schools and offices and restrictions to movement in an attempt to curb transmission have resulted in additional persons being confined to their homes for extended periods, thereby increasing the consumption of food and other essential supplies. COVID-19, therefore, is expected to cause increases to the number of households locally categorized as living in poverty, and thereby warranting the government's support and relief. Mr. Speaker, CDC's 2020 budget for COVID-19 response therefore was developed on this underpinning and catering for the continued provision of relief to the most vulnerable groups during the final quarter of this year, 2020. An approach of two modalities will be utilized to ensure that households are accessed through a mechanism that is more feasible at this time, given the local realities of the individuals, their communities, and the existing threats of the pandemic. The logistical costs related to the physical distribution, primarily the transporting of these resources to the remote communities, are catered for in the budget, as are the expenses related to the procedures required to effectively and efficiently implement the public assistance program across the 10 administrative regions. Further, maintaining the safety and security of CDC's personnel and volunteers will remain a necessity in all activities, and the budget therefore incorporates provision of the necessary resources to safeguard health and well-being while providing support during a pandemic response. These measures outlined, Mr. Speaker, will definitely help to reduce the devastating impacts of COVID-19, as well as natural and man-made disasters on the citizens of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I wish to reiterate my support for this budget, especially given the constraints with which my government had to operate upon assuming office. This budget is indeed a people-centered budget with the simple goal of achieving the long-hoped-for prosperity which our people deserve. It will not be an easy road, and it will take patience and perseverance. The opposition call it an emergency budget, but it is visionary in its outlook. It covers and makes substantial provisions for the issues that matter to all Guyanese, and those that will transform Guyana over the coming years. Energy expansion and diversification, education, housing, health, water and sanitation, ICT, youth, children, senior citizens, petroleum, public safety and security, agriculture and food security, Amerindian and hinterland development are all aspects that are covered adequately in this budget to take us to the end of 2020. Those who stand in the House and criticize this budget clearly lack vision. They do not support progress and development. They do not genuinely care about the Guyanese people. And obviously, they have not even an iota of how to manage or run a country. In the past 5 years, our citizens have been sold promises that never came to light, leading to disappointments and downfalls that set our country back in several areas of our development and well-being. Now we have a chance to move forward along a more prosperous and successful path towards a future that, with the PPPC government continued drive, will certainly be achieved. The opposition continue to illustrate to the world at large why the people of Guyana lack confidence in their leadership, and why after just 5 years of being in office, they were voted out and now have to spend the next 5 years, and perhaps longer, sitting in their rightful place, that is in opposition. Never again must we allow our people to suffer and live in dark days. Never again must the rights of our people be threatened and disrespected by power-hungry and selfish individuals. Our government promises to ensure that all our peoples are treated equally. We will serve in the best interests of all of Guyanese citizens. And all will live in prosperity in this our beautiful and beloved native Guyana. Guyana the free. Thank you very much.